name's Tom Mariome. I'm chairman of the Finance and Property Committee. We are meeting in the council chambers at City Hall via remote video conferencing. It's Tuesday, February 1st, 2022, and it's about 4:34 p.m. in the afternoon. With that, I'll call the meeting to order. We have Alderperson Jake Catnaugh, who's a member of the committee, James Epke, a member of the committee, Patrick Delaney, member of the council, Mayor Blazer, Tim DeSorsi, finance director. Let's see, Matt Zacher, member of the council, Paul Bollert, street superintendent, and Ryan Hartman from HR, and we do have Mr. King here from the Police and Fire Commission that we're going to take up an item for them. And if it's okay with the rest on the committee here, we'll go to that item first. Paul said if we want to take that item up, it'd be okay. He's got a couple with the street crew that are 2 and 3, and if we wanted to take up the police and fire one first, we could. So if there's no objections, we'll go to item number 4 to start with. Okay, item number 4. Consider request from the Police and Fire Commission to allocate funding and approval of a budget transfer resolution for the recruitment of a fire chief. Our chief has resigned. Actually, I think that last October 31st, I think, was his deadline, I think. But so here we are, and to get the process moving. I'm not sure. Mayor, do you want to start with something here? Or?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Rayom. In the packet, there is the minutes from the Police and Fire Commission, and Bruce King is here also. Other members wanted to be in attendance, but they were unavailable. Also in the packet, you'll find 2 proposals from McGrath. The first proposal was $17,500. After myself and my assistant had some conversations with McGrath, and Mr. Ryan Hartman's here also, he can explain, looking at what the capabilities of our human resource department is, along with what services they provide. And ultimately, I think the service that they provide, which would be a help, is their assessment panel, where they come in, they bring some chiefs and some experts at that level. They run through scenarios, they have an interview, and they rank the candidates there. And that ranking is then given to the PFC. The PFC can then decide if they want to do something further. But the second proposal was for $7,500. And the Police and Fire Commission discussed it, and that's what they ultimately chose to go with, and are requesting that funding be allocated to their budget for that.
Okay, any questions by anybody? I guess from my standpoint, I guess the difference there isn't a big difference in the price really per se. We want to just go over a little bit. In short, I guess the difference in services between the $17,500 and the $7,500, and what the what we're going to get. Because the difference in price isn't a huge amount. But.
Maybe if Ryan wants to come up and explain a few things, what human resources can do for the process.
Yep.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, so to Tom's question, the difference in the pricing, and with the packets here, but the city would be doing a lot of the front, heavy lifting at the front, the posting in the position, gathering the applications. Basically, what we'd be doing is everything else, or everything that McGrath had proposed to be doing for the initial cost, or the first proposal, I believe it was $17,500. We would do all of that to the point of where the assessment center and then the interviews would come in and would be needed. So in-house, we would be doing all of those things to get it down to the 7,500 where they would come in and run the assessment center with the other chiefs from other municipalities. Does that answer it in brief?
Okay. Bruce, would you like to say anything from the commission standpoint? I didn't, forgot to mention when we started here, we have our city attorney Sue Shills on Zoom with us, so if we have any need to go to her, if she has any comments too, Sue, feel free to zoom in, or talk in.
There we go. The only thing that we'd have with additional expense besides the $7,500 would be possibly meals and travel for the candidates. And we just felt that the higher price was not needed, especially where Human Resources, the mayor's office, is going to be helping us. So we're real happy if we could get the $7,500 for the consultant to come in. So.
Okay. Jake, and then Patrick.
So additional money for expenses of travel and meals, is that going to be requested separately, or is that something you guys already have?
To be honest with you, I've only been on the commission a year and a half, and so I'm not sure how they do that. That was just brought up that might be a possibility that's required for us to do, and maybe Mayor Tim could respond to that as.
In the Police and Fire Commission budget is kind of an annual budget expenditure is there's $1,000 in there for recruiting, because throughout the year, just not only for fire chief positions, but also open vacancies for firefighters and police officers. So any travel expenses in addition to the $7,500 could be covered out of there.
So that fund already exists and is funded. Okay. Thank you.
Patrick, do you have something?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we have the interim chief. Is he considered for this job? Like, is Wisconsin Rapids a place where they promote within? Or is there like I'm just trying to figure out. Like,
Yeah, so he would apply if he's interested. I would assume he is.
okay, why wouldn't we go through just posting it and that before you spent any money?
So it is posted now. And so that is being done with the HR staff. It's to bring in a group that has, I've never been a fire chief. There's nobody in staff here. So this organization will help go through and put them through some scenarios. And it's made up of other chiefs, the assessment panel. And so they'll go through the scenarios, they'll go through an interview, and then they'll rank the candidates that the PFC chooses to bring in to put through the assessment center. And then that ranking will be given to the PFC, and then it'll be the PFC's choice to go with that ranking or, take other factors or other interviews in when they make their decision on hiring that person. Because it's solely a police and fire commission's decision. We don't have any involvement in that process.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add to that, it is my understanding we have 3 in-house fire department personnel that actually meet the qualifications to be chief, and we're hoping that all 3 of them will apply. And what I was told by the other commissioners is one of the reasons we do this is we discuss this in length is because then it can show there's no favoritism or anybody. They give us the list of the top candidates. We still make the decision, but it kind of cleans up that possible problem or conflict. So, but
Thank you. Matt?
Thank you. I just wanted to put my support in there too. I talked to one of the commissioners today for quite a while, and that was the sense that I got was the worry of not being able to see the forest through the trees in a way, and who would be the best person for the job, but also not having necessarily the expertise to do that hiring or the time to do it properly. So I'm in support of the 7,500 to help them make the best choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Or committee, what would you make for recommendation?
I'll make a motion to approve the $7,500 for the Police and Fire Commission. Tim?
Court seconded, just to say so that, and can you also include the budget resolution? And basically what that is that if you remember at, during the 2022 budget process, we put the funds for this that was originally budgeted in the Police and Fire Commission, put it contingency. And so basically what the resolution would do is just be taking out a contingency and putting in the Police and Fire Commission budget.
Okay. Okay, I'll make a motion to transfer money out of the general fund to pay the $7,500 for the Police and Fire Commission.
It's all in one motion then?
Yes, please.
I'll second that. A motion is second to, budget resolution, transfer of $7,500 for, to go into the process, open the process of, looking at the new fire chief. Committee, if there's nothing else, we can vote on that. All in favor, respond by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Both sides have it 3-0. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Bruce. Back up to item number 2 here. And that'll be to review and approve the equipment replacement plan for 2022 and portion of the 2023 budget.
Okay, thank you. As it says in your packet there, in previous years, we've included, or we've come to the Finance and Property Committee with individual items throughout the year. This year, in speaking with Tim, it was our intent to have this document as you see it in front of you as part of our budget, and it didn't happen. And so we're bringing it to you as a whole, just to try to save people's time and the coming back multiple times. Part of the additional request is for in 2023. Right now, the heavy trucks and heavy equipment is seeing the same thing that the commercial or normal vehicles are, and so there's starting to be a huge delay in getting those vehicles, anywhere from 16 to 20 months. And so we'd like to start that process with the intent in not taking delivery until 2023 on those. And so that's why the second request to have portion of the 2023 equipment replacement plan brought forth to you too. In looking at the list, you'll see that there is a couple vehicles that are only a few years old. Mayor Blazer and Tim DeSorsi and myself spent probably like the last year in talking with Enterprise Rental Car. They made a big push to have us lease all of our non-CDL required vehicles from them. And, we really took a lot of time in analyzing it and things like that. And we felt on the last day, that it was a really good plan, but the fees and interest and things like that was associated with it really didn't fit our need, or there wasn't a point for us to pay that to do the exact same thing. And so part of this plan then is, like I say, we have 3 vehicles that we purchased in 2020, was to just kind of try it to see if what they're proposing is actually true. So if you don't know, the city has purchases at a government discount anywhere from 18 to 20% less retail. And so the thought process is that, the way that Enterprise was pitching it was to lease for 12 months and then sell it after that 12 months. And because of our purchasing 20% or 15 to 20% lower, at the end of that 12 months, we would actually be able to use the vehicle for an entire year and sell it for more than what we purchased it for. Part of the problem is I don't think, we have 11 of these vehicles. I don't think it's realistic to have my shop go through and retrofit 11 vehicles every single year. And so we took, I kind of took that and said, okay, took a snapshot of these 3 vehicles in general. We're going to be 24 months into it, and we're still showing, based off of, internet wholesale values of profits of $1,500 to $2,000. So in essence, even if we break even, in my opinion, is better than making money, because currently it costs us like $2,500 a year just in depreciation for these vehicles. So we would have at a minimum of a $2,500 increase. And so that's what I'm proposing to do this year, is to just take there's municipalities, I believe he said City of Wausau, Marathon County, the city of Portage has just jumped on to this program. So it's becoming more and more that there's municipalities that are doing it. And so I would, I've heard of this. He did a very good job of selling it. But like I say, in the long run, it was, I believe, close to $600 interest for over the 12-month period. And then they wanted you to have a service plan included in it. And then at the end of the year, when they sold it at auction, it was another $500 charge for that. And so, like I say, the part that I struggled with it is then you're dealing with somebody over the phone in Milwaukee or whatever, where if we did it here locally in town, I can drive over to Wheelers, or I can drive to Rapids Ford, plus they're local businesses that are eventually going to make something out of this rather than somebody in Milwaukee. And so that's what the majority of these items are on here, is to test this plan. We're not out anything, because some of the vehicles have to be replaced. They're 15 years old. Some of them, like I say, there's 3 of them that are 2 years old, that after 2 years here, they're pushing, ton of life left in them, 20,000 miles in 2 years, but there'll be 1 year left of warranty, where it would have some value to the dealership that's going to sell them, and or we can sell them on our auction site too. Is typically what I would do, is get the trade-in price from the dealership and then sell them on auction. The other items are simply a 1 ton or a 1.5 ton vehicle that is part of our gentleman that goes out and sets traffic control. We have a 1985 grader that is part of our fleet that we use for plowing snow, that I'm just looking to upgrade it. I'm not going to buy a brand new one. It's $360,000 for a brand new one. There's no need for a new one, but looking for a used one that has a lot of life in it and things like that, just to be part of our fleet. The other item then is our construction crew works out of a mobile office in the summer months. That too is 22 years old. The floor is rotten in it, and it's the second floor. This would be the 3rd floor that we put in the trailer since we've had it. And, to me, it just makes sense to upgrade it. There's been some changes in the trailers and things like that. And then the last thing, or the second to last thing then is down in our sign shop, we currently have a standalone centerline striper that would cost about $170,000 to replace it with the same thing. There's a manufacturer that we use for our other ones that has a centerline striper that slides into the back of a pickup truck. It can hold more paint than our standalone version does, and you can still use it as a truck. We tried to go and look at this fall, but with the different COVID things going on, the salesman wasn't available. So there is no guarantee that I would buy this, but it's something that we think is a viable solution to what we currently do. And then the last thing is the $10,000 for shop scanners. Right now, our shop is kind of behind as far as having the capability to scan the different codes. Everything is electronic now, right? I mean, we can scan it, but we don't have the capability of resetting it. And so one of our staff members went around to the different, we deal with I-State Truck, Airing Equipment, JX Truck Center, Then we have Fords in our fleet, we have Dodges in our fleet, we have Chevrolets in our fleet. So we pretty much have everything. And we can purchase and purchase and subscribe to these different companies pretty much for nothing, but it takes to go and buy the different connectors that plug into laptops and things like that. And so that's just what this $10,000 would do, would be to, purchase the computer that's required, purchase the different connectors to plug into the different piece of equipment. That would allow us to do a lot of our own diagnostic stuff ourselves instead of having, we're fortunate that Aaron Equipment has a service tech that lives down in the town of Rome, that a lot of times he'll swing by us on the way home at the end of the day type thing. Sometimes it doesn't happen. But here we could do our own diagnostic stuff ourselves. Then the request for the two items, unit number 4 and number 5 in 2023. Those are two multi-axle dump trucks that we use with our construction practices and everything like that. Right now, they're talking anywhere from 16 to 20 months to get that vehicle in place. And so I would just simply like to do the request for proposals on that, and then we would get the purchase order done and get that time clicking or whatever. So as far as budget-wise goes, in our public works budget, I'll probably say this wrong, Tim, but there's $450,000 annually that gets put into this equipment replacement fund as part of our rental rate. And so I failed to add these numbers up for you or whatever, but all of the replacement costs are equal to $398,000, so there's still some left in there. Plus then obviously any of the trade values would go back into that also.
Questions, anybody? After all that. Jake?
So I wasn't there for I guess this is my first time hearing about the sales presentation from Enterprise. I feel there's a benefit to owning our own vehicles, especially in this climate of inflation and the value of used vehicles going up. My car's worth more than it was a couple years ago, for example. And I don't want to get into the rotation of bringing in rentals year after year, unknown costs to the city. So we approve it this year, it comes back next year, the cost of vehicles in general are up, or Enterprise does, and then we're stuck looking for them. Then I think there's a benefit to owning our own vehicles and purchasing from businesses in town. So I'm not for any renting of the vehicles. Maybe that's something that could be revisited, but yeah, any of them at all, even testing it out with 3. As far as the other areas of it, I think most of them make sense. I don't have any concerns with anything else.
And just to clarify, Jake, we aren't going to do any of the rental. We're virtually just copying their thought process on rotating it more frequently. Currently we're running them pretty much until there's no value left in them. And so the thought process is that we would trade in these 2 trucks that are 2 years old right now, and for the most part, they should, because of that, like you said, the high value of used vehicles right now, should pay for the new ones at our 15 to 20% discount. So we aren't doing anything with Enterprise, but we're just copying their plan.
Okay. I heard the 3 vehicles
Yep.
potentially going with that
Yeah,
route.
and so it's just a test of that thought process to see if it would actually work.
Okay.
Is all that we're doing.
And the one thing I would note on that is on the back end, trade-in value on paper at a dealership isn't actually dollar amount equal. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, but I think there's value to owning our own vehicles and getting every ounce of life we can out of them where it's necessary.
Jake?
So you were talking about the quad axle trucks. Are these 3 trucks that you're talking about doing now, have you checked on availability, and are they going to come equipped the way you want? I'm assuming these are all pickups, yes? Just
Yeah, so at the time that this was done back in November, they were available to do it at the time. Tim and I had different conversations, and so I spoke with Wheelers and actually Johnson's back in December, and at that time, they had put a freeze on all of the governmental pricing and fleet vehicles. But he said that it's pretty much every 30 days, it's going to be brought back up again, you know. So the way that he explained it is that in November and December, the fleet vehicles were being produced because they didn't rely on as many computer chips because there isn't, you know, the backup sensors and all this other stuff on them. And so, you know, if approved tonight, we would simply just review it, you know, until that they came available. So there's a chance that it wouldn't be available throughout the whole entire year because the manufacturers are playing catch up. I know the police department has the same issue because they wanted to get a couple cruisers and they can't. They wanted to stay with Dodges, and Dodge isn't doing anything as of right now. So,
Okay, just so I'm clear then, your request is to replace 3 vehicles, correct? 3 pickups?
no, it's actually
Replace all those this year?
it's actually 9 pickup trucks and then one F-450, just as it's shown as on
Okay.
the plan here. So it's the pickup trucks as shown to replace a 1985 grader, to replace a 22-year-old construction office trailer, and then to replace a 1991 centerline paint striper, and then the shop tools. And then the additional, start the process on unit number 4 and unit 5.
Thank you.
Jake, did you have something?
Yeah, so looking at this, I'm just wondering where this fits into like the overall budget. So it's 2022, we already approved the budget for this. Is this all there and this is more giving them the clearance to go out and move forward with these items, or are we
Right.
looking for a budget amendment?
Well, no, well, actually, it's 2 parts. Is, you know, into our equipment rental rates. So we calculate and generate an internal rate for rental rate for our equipment. So if they take a quad axle and are doing street maintenance, on the timesheet, they not only put their time on, but they charge that equipment to that account. So basically what we do is we have an internal cost pool where we track the cost to maintain the equipment, but also in that is depreciation, and that's what's then spread out through the budget through those rental rates, so that, you know, the cost of that maintaining the fleet is spread over the budgets of where that equipment is being used. And in there, we include the depreciation, basically the replacement of that.
Right.
So every year, we're capturing a little bit more of that depreciation that we use and then put aside in a fleet equipment replacement fund to fund the replacement of that equipment. And currently, right now, the rates, it's estimated that we recapture about $450,000. But we also have accumulated funds that we've had over the years because, some years we buy more equipment than others based on what the needs and the performance of the equipment and what shape it's in. So we have $450,000 that was estimated in the 2022 budget, but also at year end, and once we close the books, but we also have available in the fund or left over at the end of this year $660,000. So basically, what'll happen is in March we'll bring back a transfer resolution, a carryover resolution that we do each year for these equipment replacement accounts, and we carry those funds forward to fund purchases in the upcoming year and future years. So there is budget funds available for this equipment because we have the mechanism set up to fund their replacement.
And then the ones listed in 2023, there wouldn't be, an ask at the 2023 budget meetings to increase, or would there be more funds there needed there?
Well, as part of the 2023 budget, we're going to be asking all department heads that have replacement accounts to update those replacement accounts over a 5-year period. So then we can kind of do an analysis to make sure, that the funding level that's in the budget is appropriate, whether it's not enough, insufficient to fund those purchases, or there's going to be excess funds that may be reallocated to a different use.
So this 2023 that's in the packet, that's the start of that?
Right, this is his estimate for replacing that equipment. And like I said, those 23 pieces of equipment, if they're existing pieces, we've already recaptured that depreciation. Theoretically, it's sitting in the equipment replacement account for when we replace that. So some of these 2023 are probably already accounted for in the 2022 budget, plus whatever the final carryover amount will be.
Okay, thank you.
If there's no other questions or anything, committee, what would your wishes?
I just have one more question to Paul, just so I'm clear on this. What are you asking for unit 4 and 5? Are you just asking to go ahead, or are you looking for money for those now?
No, it would be just to start the process. The money wouldn't be,
Okay.
the plan would be is that the truck isn't going to be delivered till 2023. I mean, every vendor that I have spoken to is a minimum of 12 months for the trucks, and then probably 2 or 3 months after that to get the boxes put on it. So that those wouldn't be, it's just to simply request proposals and get the ball rolling, get a spot so that we take delivery in 2023.
So if you go through the process, I guess, typically do you have to put money down on these?
No.
So just pay when they show up?
Yep.
Okay.
And it's my intent that if when requesting RFPs, if any of the prices exceed the estimates that I'm showing, I would come back to the committee to get approval to go over that value.
Jake? Oh, in the back there. Yeah. Oh, shit.
My question was on the day code office trailer. Is that one of those Connexes that are custom built into a trailer, put on like an 18-wheeler, or what kind of trailer is that for the construction trailer?
No, so it's not a steel container. Like right now at the fire department, if you've driven by there, they have like beige and brown. So it's just an office trailer, yes, that's on a single axle or tandem axle trailer. I believe ours is 28 feet in length, and it has an office compartment that's like 8 foot by 10 foot in the back, and then the rest of it's like the lunchroom area.
Could you utilize one of those larger Connex trailers that are, you can have, like, I know the owner of Stowcore, Storage Unlimited, and I know that they make custom built office trailers and construction trailers that.
Yeah, we could look into that. It's just like I say, we just simply called the company that has the one right now with those Connex trailers, and you're relying on them to move it, I believe. I don't know that they set them on axles. I'm not familiar with that. So it's something that I can definitely check in, yes.
All right. Thank you.
Jake? Or committee?
Jake.
I thought you were.
I did have my hand up. I'll
Okay,
make a
I thought so.
motion to approve the equipment replacement plan for 2022 and a portion of 2022, or 23, sorry.
I'll second that. Jake?
One more question. So with the trial of doing our own essentially in-house rental, if for some reason we're not seeing value on that or anything, that comes back, right? Like we're not stuck to that, or we're not starting this process and it's just going to continue with those 3 vehicles over time, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
It's simply, so back to my previous comment, is currently our practice is to run these half-ton pickup trucks for 12 to 15 years, and there's no value left in them whatsoever. The bodies are starting to rot out and everything like that. So the thought process is just to kind of change that, and according to Enterprise, they feel that this 12 to 24 months is the sweet spot, where we're actually using them for that time period, and then we're trading them in, or We also have the luxury of Wisconsin Surplus, or there's other governmental surplus sites that we can take the trade-in value that they're showing us and make that our minimum bid, and then put them on these websites to see if someone else wants to purchase them through that auction site for us. So yeah, we own them. It's not a rent. If if in 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 12 months from now, that value isn't there on the trade-in, then yeah, we stop it, and then we go back and reanalyze and say, okay, maybe it's 6 years or 8 years that we keep the stuff, or maybe it's going back to 12 years and running it into the ground.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, committee, if there's nothing else, we'll vote on it. All in favor, respond by aye. Aye. Opposed, ayes have it, 3-0. Thank you. Item number 3 is review and set rates for contractors and non-resident compost site passes for 2022. Paul?
Okay, thank you. So typically, every 2 or 3 years, we do analysis of the compost site usages. Obviously, for residents, there's no fee that's associated with it because it's part of our budgetary item. We currently have an agreement with the town of Grand Rapids, town of Saratoga, village of Buren, Port Edward, Seneca, and Siegel, I believe, is part of that too. As part of, all of us as municipalities have to have a recycling program. And so part of our agreement with them is that we allow their non-residents to use our compost sites as part of their, getting the recycling grant. And so in your packet there, I took the last 2 years and just kind of picked apart the usage of the compost sites. As I say up in the top there, on an annual basis, it typically costs us about $156,861 to run those compost sites. That includes hiring Nicolay Temps to have gatekeepers there, us pushing up the compost, rotating the compost, screening the compost, pushing up brush piles, working with the contractor to come in and grind the brush, everything that's associated with to run the 2 compost sites. So then simply based off of the usage, I came up with, the different percentages of what the non-residents usage is and the contractor usage is. The contractor piece is a little bit hard to wrap your head around just because we don't have a gatekeeper at the west side, the whole entire time that it's open. And so we just kind of made some assumptions there based on the usage, just off of the time period that the gatekeeper is there or whatever. So in taking the usages and the percentage of the usage, we weren't that far off with our non-resident tags, but it's my recommendation that we increase them $5 for the year 2022. If you did the math, it figured out to be like $54.78 or whatever, so just to cover the changes in the expenses over the last couple of years. The contractor piece, the last 2 years, we've been averaging anywhere from 28 to 30 contractors that are coming in and purchasing tags. What we do is it's $175 for a contractor to purchase 2 tags, and then it's $25 for every additional tag after that. Did some checking around. The town of Rome is the only person that got back to me. They charge, I'm sorry, I got this right here. The town of Rome charges $500 for their contractors that live within the township, and then they charge $650 for the contractors that live outside of the township. So that kind of got me thinking, kind of along the lines of what the discussions have been on aquatics and things like that, that we have these contractors that are living in Rapids. They're technically paying taxes already for their properties that are located, or their businesses that are located in town. So why not do a staggered approach similar to what they did? As far as the contractors, their portion of it to break even was like $367, based off of 28 contractors being part of it. So it was my recommendation then to reduce them down to $300 annually, and then charge the non-resident contractors $400 annually, and then $25 for each additional tag that they would want. that would pretty much generate, based off of the numbers that have been pretty consistent over the last 3 or 4 years, minus 2019 when we had the storm damage and every contractor wanted to bring their brush to us because they were coming out of the woodwork because of the amount of damage that we had. So that would cover that portion of the cost there. And then the final recommendation, we have a rate for contractors that bring in stumps because we have to process the stumps in order for the stump grinder to haul them, or to grind them, because of how large they are. They can't go through the grinder. And so it's my recommendation to just increase those different levels by $10 each, just because, they're getting careless, I guess would be the right word, where they're coming in with 2-3 yards of black dirt that's on them versus clean and everything like that. And so we have more time associated with that and simply just covering our costs.
So you beat me to it on the benefits to a resident versus non-resident and other discussions we've had. I'm glad that was taken into consideration when looking at this. I still find that the residents are getting the bad end of this deal. I mean, it costs $156,000 to maintain this, and I don't see any math here on what we're generating from non-resident tags. Contractor tags is obviously very low. It's $242. I don't want the city of Wisconsin Rapids to be the place that's subsidizing every contractor in the greater area coming to dump their stuff, which is what it seems like. The West Side yearly usage for contractors, where there is no gatekeeper, is more than 10 times used than where there is a gatekeeper, if that tells you anything. So they obviously are dumping and they don't want to pay. As for the non-residents, I would $55 for a tag to use Rapids. I feel like it's more than a $55 benefit. I'm glad we did make some progress, but with what's going on the west side, where there's no gatekeeper, where contractors are dumping over there, and then it looks like the city of Wisconsin Rapids taxpayers again subsidizing that dumping. I mean, if they're a Wisconsin Rapids business, by all means, I mean, I have no problem with them going over there if they have a tag, and their cost should, in my opinion, be half of what a non-resident contractor is. Here, they're only saving $100. So I guess I just have an issue with that on the same note that I have an issue with all things that we do as a city that it seems are subsidized by residents, and everybody else who lives around us that pays lower taxes gets to come into the city and use. So that's where I'm at this. I don't know if I could go forward with this proposal right here, but I do like the direction it's going in terms of benefiting businesses in the city more. That's where I stand right now.
Thanks, Jake. Paul?
So I can just clear that up, Jake, I'm sorry. So on the west side, the numbers that you are seeing, those are the numbers of contractors that are using the compost site while there is a gatekeeper there from 11 o'clock to 7 o'clock at night. And so what we did is we took those numbers and virtually just doubled them, because there's 3 days out of a 6-day week that there is a gatekeeper there, and the other 3 days there isn't. And so, like I said, we just made assumptions. We all know what assumptions mean. So to me, they are somewhat quantified. They may be low on those quantities, but we do have it. In my opinion, we have it quantified. So just using those numbers, then I apologize, I didn't have the sheet in front of me. So Wisconsin Rapids residents are 70% of the usage of the compost sites, both east and west combined. The non-residents represent 23% of the usage, and then the contractors with those assumptions in place represent 7% of the usage. Okay, so then breaking out that that $156,000 based off of those usages. The contractors were trying to, I'm going to round these numbers here. The contractors were trying to encapsulate $11,000 worth. The non-residents are $36,000 worth. And the residents, again, are based off of paying their property taxes are $109,000 worth. So then, the non-residents over the last 2 years pretty consistently, plus or minus like 30 tags, have bought in 650 tags through those different municipalities. So then taking that 36,000 divided by those 650 tags being sold, that's where I came up with that $55 for that tag price.
Thank you for going over that. I guess what still lingers in my mind is that if contractors, non-residents, people know that 3 days out of the week they can go over to the west side and dump, I'd assume that's what they would be doing, and rather than paying $400 annually. I'm not sure what it would cost to put a gatekeeper over there, and I guess that's another discussion. But I assume there's a lot going on over there that is unaccounted for.
We do have staff that's out there, that's part of the West Side Compost is part of our city pit. Now, it's not their job to sit there and, Alderperson Bemke did it for the last 20, well, not the last 2 years, but the 20 years prior to that. But, that person isn't going to sit at the brush pile or at the compost pile, but, he is roaming around because he's got the responsibility of loading our trucks and things like that. So it's not like it's a free-for-all, but there are times that there isn't anybody there. You are correct with that statement.
Thank you. And for clarifying on that, and maybe we can get Jay to go back over there on those days. There's not a gatekeeper. No, okay. I guess I would just like to see, at least in terms of the tag rate for Wisconsin Rapids businesses being a little more beneficial to being a business in Wisconsin Rapids than $100 a year for compost site. And I don't know if that's reducing the rate for businesses in Wisconsin Rapids or increasing the non-contractor rate. To be honest, if you want to do business in Wisconsin Rapids, I would like to see them have a resident rate or less. We want to encourage businesses to come here. So with all that said, I think I would make a motion to approve the proposed rates for contractors and non-resident compost site with the change that Wisconsin Rapids businesses pay $50 a year annually for a tag and $50 for an additional tag. Sure, so the motion is to approve the proposed rates for contractors and non-resident compost site passes for 2022 with the change of the proposed rates that Wisconsin Rapids businesses, instead of the proposed rate of $300, pay $50. And for an additional tag, they pay another $50.
We don't have a second, but Jay?
I think just a couple things. One, first of all, correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, or if you want to pick this up. Most of the contractors are out from outside of the city anyways. That's pretty fair?
Yeah, I think of the 29 that get tags, there was 9 that had Wisconsin Rapids addresses for their business location.
And the other thing is, The tree services are not allowed to use the east side compost site, correct?
Correct.
So, yeah, it is what it is.
Bruce?
For those that don't know you, I'm Bruce King. I own Grounds Detail Service here in Wisconsin Rapids. I've had the business for 28 years. I think the rates have been extremely low, and the new rates proposed, I think, are still even low, because if you look at what I'd have to pay out, it's peanuts compared to what, if I didn't have it available. I a lot of times use a private contractor like Velocic Landscaping to dump my compost if the city's not open. So I wouldn't be afraid to charge enough. If I had to pass those costs on to my customers, it probably wouldn't cost them 10, 15 cents a customer, you know, in the big picture of things. So I myself, from a standpoint of being fair, I think as high as you guys want to go with it, I, as a local contractor, would have no problem with it, so. Just wanted to bring that to your attention, so, thank you.
Thank you.
Tom,
Yes, sir.
thank you, Bruce. I think that was a good point. I mean, we have an example of a business owner who can speak to these rates directly and the impact on their business. I just think in all these areas of the city that can be potentially revenue generating, we are lackluster in proposing ways to increase that revenue. We talk all the time about saving money in different areas and cutting this, cutting that, but all these areas that bring in revenue or could potentially bring in revenue, we're not maximizing there. And if we were to, that brings a bunch of money into the city where potentially maybe we don't need to cut as much, and it fixes that budget issue. So, I mean, my motion still stands, but I just want to get back to that anytime we have a revenue generating area of the city, we should treat it like a business. And in a business wouldn't operate if this were the margins. And I know we're not a business, I've heard that said before, but we could at least try to get close to it. And then our customers that we're passing this down to are our residents, just as a reminder.
Jay?
Maybe Bruce wants to come back up, but could you tell us how many of your customers are residents and non-residents? Do you have an idea? Not everybody, that's just because the business is in town doesn't necessarily mean that the business is coming from town.
It's hard to say each year it changes, but probably maybe 30% of my customers are City of Wisconsin Rapids residents, and 70% of my customers are outside the city limits. I mean, even outside the county. So from that standpoint, if I'm bringing in compost and I did the job for someone out in Grand Rapids, why should I give, I mean, and I don't charge them extra for it, but I don't feel comfortable in bringing compost from Grand Rapids into the city and me getting a special deal just because my business is in the city. So.
Thank you.
And I'll be honest with you, I also have a little conflict that though my home residence has the office, and that's where technically my business is located, my shop is in Grand Rapids, right across the street. I'm surrounded by the city of Wisconsin Rapids except one side. So, you know, shops in Grand Rapids, the office is in Wisconsin Rapids. So I like to be fair about it. So.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Mr. Wicks, did you have something?
Yes, sir. I just had a question on, with the compost, both sides. I went to Midstate for urban forestry, so I got to learn a lot about plant biology and invasive species here in the state. My question was, what are we doing to alert out of town businesses or contractors that are coming in and using our facilities to not bring in invasive species? I've worked with Mr. King. I've owned my own small lawn care business for a short time here in Rapids. Invasive species like buckthorn, and let's just use that one for an example. That's the biggest issue. when we're on a job site, you got to have proper maintenance of your tools so you're not transporting buckthorn from one residence to the next. But not every landscape company knows how to identify buckthorn, and when they're cutting shrubs, they're just throwing it in with their trailer and bringing it into the dump. It doesn't live forever, nothing does. But, you know, within a season, if you guys are grinding that up to make compost or mulch, all you're doing is then just spreading it throughout the city and making the DNR have more of a challenge to try to eradicate buckthorn in our city. Do we have any like signs about warnings of invasive species? Don't dump invasive species. Anything like that?
We don't have anything at our compost sites about that, but our mulch, when they do come and grind, is taken up to the Rothschild mill and used for boiler fuel. So it isn't reused as mulch in landscaping areas or anything like that. We do have a separate area for our, sorry, I'm drawing a blank. For our trees with emerald ash board, sorry.
Yeah, that's another big one.
That we separate that. I believe there was, I'm not 100% positive when I but I believe there was a letter that was sent out to all the contractors that have passes within the city saying that we have a designated site for emerald ash borer. But I, once again, not 100% confident when I make that statement.
Okay. All right, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, committee, you want to try another motion, or same motion, whichever.
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve the rates for contractors and non-resident compost site passes for 2022.
As Paul went over?
As presented, yes.
Yeah, as presented, okay. I will second that at this point in time. I think through the discussion that we've had this evening, I think we're on the right, getting on the right path anyway, but I appreciate comments from, I guess that's my comments with on what the motion is here, but appreciate comments that we've gotten from people in the audience, but from those here on the committee and others that as we go forward, that this is something I think has given us maybe new ideas or different thoughts, maybe of how to look at maybe how to set these rates to generate some income or something. So for now, we do have a motion. Did you have something? Okay, Matt.
Thank you. I would recommend possibly putting something in, or putting it out maybe this year as to, I mean, look into this, I guess, and from what I'm hearing, we're way under what we could and should be at for a very, very invaluable service to the people who do this work, considering, again, if the folks that he's working on outside of the city are just sending it in through him, and it's costing his company 10 cents per, job to do it, we're, kind of losing money that way too. Is it possible to say, I don't think there's anything wrong when it comes to from a business standpoint to double these prices not this coming year, but send something out to let them know that the prices are going to go up and, come to that agreement so that they have some time to process without it being slammed right away. But I think we should get in line with what that service actually does for the people of this area, since it's really the only one that's here. And I don't think that's abuse of an area. I think that's just getting paid for a really valuable service.
Thank you. Yeah. Jay?
Paul, do we have a policy, compost policies, and have you ever gone to Public Works with us?
So that's what I was actually going to say is I had talked with Mayor Blazer just about how how we do our compost sites with non-residents. Quite frankly, I'd like to totally change how we do it and not have the administrative piece of it be on us, and simply go to the different townships that want to be part of it and say, here, this is a flat cost to be part of our, regional compost site, for lack of better words, and then have them administer the tags and things like that. And so we were going to bring that to the Public Works Committee, probably later part of the first quarter, second quarter type thing to start that discussion, because that recycling agreement gets put in place in September for 2023. So that way we can have it, number one, in place for the townships to be able to budget that way. And then obviously let them know ahead of time also, so.
Thank you. Again, I appreciate the discussion that we had on this. I think it enlightened, I think, a lot of our minds on what's all goes into this and that. So if there's nothing else, committee will vote on that. All in favor, respond by aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, 2-1. Thank you. And that's all be reported to the council. Item number 5, review the 2023 budget timeline and procedure. Tim, do you want to start with that?
Sure.
Or Mayor, whichever one of you, I guess.
Okay. Based on last month's finance meeting discussion, I put together a proposed 2023 budget timeline, trying to incorporate some of the ideas and concerns of the alderperson and the council as a whole. So I kind of came up, and I'll just briefly go through it. And basically, the gist of it is that for our capital budgets, is that department heads would submit their capital budgets to the mayor by April 30th, 2022. Also, on the operating side, if they're going to request or going to be requesting additional personnel or have any significant or anticipate any significant changes in their operating budgets, they would also identify those and submit those to the mayor by April 30, 2022. During the month of May, the mayor would sit down and review those requests with the department heads, both on the capital and operating side. Also, during that month, based on the information that was submitted, I would start and compile a budget projection based on assumptions and the new information received from the capital and any major changes in their operating budgets. And I would basically compile that budget estimate, and that would include both the 2023 estimated expenditures and revenues. And obviously, that early, there are going to be some assumptions based on, because we don't have state aid information, we don't have our tax, finalized tax base, but we'll make some assumptions, and it kind of will give us a picture of where we stand based on the department head's requests. On June 14th, it's proposed that we'd have a committee of the whole meeting where the mayor and myself would present that 2023 budget projection to the council. And then based on that projection and discussion with the common council, guidance would be determined and issued to department heads for developing their final departmental budget requests. Department heads would compile and submit their 2023 department budget requests by July 31st, 2022. And then that would give us the month of August for the executive budget to look at that and submit a balanced executive budget to the common council by September 1st. Also, I'm proposing in there an August 16th council meeting that the mayor and myself will give an update to the council based on how the budgets are coming in, or if there's any significant issues, so we can have that discussion at that time. Once the executive budget is submitted to council, it'll be up to the finance committee and/or the council to determine the meetings that they would like, whether it's a finance committee meeting or a committee of the whole, between September 1st and November 8th. On November 10th would be the scheduled public hearing. And at the normally scheduled council meeting in November, that'd be November 15th, that would be the council adoption of the 2023 budget.
Thank you. Matt, did you have something?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate the work you're putting into doing this. I hope this not only is beneficial for this year, but for future years with, realizing more and more how much things change with the council, how quickly they change. I hope this helps them out too. One clarification, when I hear you say capital versus operating, is that, what are both of those defined as?
Yeah, your capital budgets are your infrastructure, construction projects, as well as equipment purchases, anything of a kind of a fixed asset nature that's not it's a lot of times capital items are like kind of once every couple of years type of item. They're not reoccurring, whereas your operating budget is really what, your departmental operating costs to deliver your services and things like that.
Okay, thank you. What is there's a lot of times that you're saying that there's things that are fixed and then there's things that aren't fixed in terms of like, this is where this money has to go, right? Or these are things that can't be changed necessarily.
Right, depending on the fund. A perfect example is their tax incremental districts. It's a special district that we create through state statutes where the tax increment generated has to be used for that. It can't be used for other purposes. We have a project plan that's adopted, with the Joint Review Board, which is made up of representatives from the school district, the Mid-State College, the county, and the city. And so you wouldn't be able to sit there and utilize those funds for some other purpose. And that's what I mean by they're fixed. And we have 3 TIF districts, and that's just an example. We have our room tax fund where by city ordinance that we have room tax that's dedicated to specific purposes, that one being park outlay, economic development. That only accounts for 30%, but 70% of that has to be spent on tourism. And that's where that 70% goes to the Visitors and Conventions Bureau. And that's when I talk about some of those funds that, we have limited control over as far as, alternative uses other than what they're, originated for.
Is there a way of having again, not trying to make your life more difficult, but as the budget's being formed, to be able to have like different designations on the line items that are set up that say fixed or variable or something that would help us understand, like, this isn't something we need to even talk about.
Sure. I mean, one of the things that, the mayor and I talked about is I'm going to go through kind of that exercise and really look at our whole fund structure and break that out for the council so they can kind of see, what drives, is supported by the tax levy and debt proceeds and user charges and what types of expenditures are, supported by designated or reserved funds that can't be used for a different purpose. So my plan is to lay that out for the council.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate your work.
Thank you. Patrick?
I have a quick question as far as the timeline goes. So looking at it, we're still going to have the final approval in November. Now, how does that change? This last year, we had the final approval in November. I know that we're doing a lot of front end work.
Mm-hmm.
How does that change the final approval in November?
As far as not wanting to have that final approval so close to where we have to submit the tax levy, or?
Correct, yeah. The last time we had people voting because they thought that it was just too late, to change anything.
Okay.
So it's really about trying to get you involved earlier and through the committee of the whole process versus just at finance, but through the committee of the whole process that you'll be able to put your input in, make motions, and kind of get involved earlier versus that November time period.
Yeah, if I just, yeah, I mean, I think we're, kind of laid out where that, between September 1st and November 8th, it's really up to the council as to how they want to address. So if we want to schedule a committee of the whole meeting to kind of go through and, look at some of these issues, I mean, motions can be made to change the budgets throughout the process. So it isn't so that, the plan is that we're having more discussion, more input, and possibly more changes so that by the time we get to that November adoption, we've kind of vetted the budget already.
Okay, thanks. That's what I wanted.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jake?
So is this moving part of the budget process from the Finance and Property Committee to a meeting of the whole type format?
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination. I didn't really want to, obviously, historically, it's the finance committee that's undertaken that review of the budget. And I think that's something where that's why the way I worded it was the finance committee and/or common council. And I think that's a discussion this body has to have as far as when we look at that time period, September 1 to November 8th, it could be a combination of where we have finance committee meetings that kind of review, some of the individual budgets, but maybe throughout that time period, we also have committee of the whole so that, other alderpersons that aren't on the finance committee could maybe have some input and possibly make, if they want to make a motion or things like that, as opposed to all of a sudden it comes out of the finance committee and we're at kind of adoption and then people, feel like, okay, I didn't have an opportunity to make any changes to the budget.
And I think
So-
that becomes part of that process of, even I felt it on the council, is that, well, if I'm not on the finance committee, how do I participate? And so by having a committee of the whole, then you can get that opportunity to participate because it's the whole council versus just finance. When finance is going over, it's hard. You can't make a motion when you're not on the finance committee. And so it almost kind of cuts you out of it until you get to a council meeting, or you can ask questions, but you can't make a change. And so the thought is that by having some of those committee of the whole meetings, then you can participate, make motions, and kind of have that better dialogue.
I understand that, but the function of the Finance and Property Committee is to vet these things. And I think if we get into a habit as a government of pulling certain things out of committee to meet as a committee of the whole, I mean, we could be doing that with public works things rather than bringing them up at common council. I think everybody should be involved. I just would caution, especially with the motions and change and everything, like everybody can be a part of the process on the way, but I mean, that the Finance and Property Committee, that is their job. So where do you draw the line on taking things out of committee? I mean, I've been on the side of being on the Finance and Property and then not being on it. And I just, to me, that's how the functions work. Like HR, Public Works, Finance and Property, we start pulling things out of those individually, I think they lose their function.
Thank you. That was actually going to be the one issue, I think, or one item that I was going to bring up, see where we went with it or whatever, and that's, understanding that I think it stays within the finance committee, and that's where it should be, where it has the and/or committee, the whole meetings as determined by the committee or council, I guess, as the time would go through, maybe that the finance committee or the council would want to have a committee of the whole to bring everybody up to speed or something like that, see where we're at. And, oops, must have bounced my, anyway, so it's, I just think it's something that the finance committee, that should stay within them. Others can attend the meeting. Obviously, as the mayor said, they can't really make, other council members not being part of the committee can't make a motion or whatever what to do, but they can speak up and lend input into what there is. So, but I think at least I just don't want it to get into that. All of a sudden, it becomes the ordinary of committee of the whole or council meetings of the budget to do. I think that's worthy, I guess, going to take other discussion. I think mine is that it stays within the it's a finance committee per se to do, and if there is need to have other meetings, to bring other peoples in to get their, for sure that they'd attend or whatever, that, could be looked at to do, but that, I think, to me anyway, would be as an assistance. The main function would be still with the Finance and Property Committee, but it's the opportunity for the whole council to be involved is there, but it also would, if people want to bring up that, hey, maybe we should all meet together because of something, or to review this, and where are we all at now? The council, we could meet, and where are we at now? To go over it, if that would be. So I don't know if that makes sense or not, but that was the one line, I guess, that struck me, and I guess, Jake, I think that's what you were getting at there is, to me, I just, somewhat of a fear of taking away from the Finance Committee, that could happen, by how that's worded there, and that I would not like, if that's the intent, I guess, then that's what the intention, that's what it should be. But at least up till now, the budget process and that has belonged to the Finance Committee, I believe, and that's, for anybody to be involved, they can. It's the entire council, the general public can be involved, whoever, the open meetings, everybody on all of it, so, and not every meeting does something actually take a vote on. It could, but it doesn't all the time. It hasn't anyway. So I guess that's my comments with that. Jake?
And I think there can be somewhat of a hybrid model. I think the Finance Committee needs to do the finance of the city. Everything needs to come through the Finance Committee if you start pulling things out as a committee of a whole. But I think you can have committee of a whole meetings along the way to talk about certain issues. And I think in April, when you know who's all going to be in the seat for the next year for sure, at that time, everybody can have their individual priorities. And basically, I wouldn't be afraid to make them known that, for example, I'm not going to vote for a budget that has this in it or is this. Because I see May 1st and May 31st, it says that the mayor reviews requests for additional personnel with department heads. Mayor reviews preliminary capital budget requests with the department heads. If we come out and we say before that this is where we stand on it, perhaps that can be part of the mayor's discussion with those department heads. Like, look, you might, don't ask for any additional personnel because we're trying to get down, or if you need it, we're looking at your area for possibly adding additional ones. But I think that conversation along the way can be an open dialogue with everybody, but it still stays within the Finance and Property Committee. And then if there's certain issues that need a committee of the whole, because there doesn't have to be action taken out of committee of the whole, right? You can just hold them for everybody to voice their opinions. And if we had those along the way in this process, I think we could come together and formulate more of what we're looking at going into fall, so it's not all decided at the November council meeting. Like, it's hashed out. We've been working on it for 5 months before then, or however long it is, and this is where we're at. And if not, then we keep meeting. I don't think we need to be afraid to do that either. That's our job.
I think we got a framework here to, to get, if we're in agreement with the framework anyway, for something to get started with, and it's obviously, I think, something to, as we go through it, to, if things need to be tweaked or changed or whatever, we'll see as we go, I guess. It's not, and I'm not saying that to slow down the process at all by any means. It's something that's new, and so we're going to have to see how things and all that play out, and so that, Jake?
So in the past, when we've done these, as the departments come in, you're going to start that on this timeline in September this year, hopefully. So in the past, have we taken action? Are those action items when they come to the council, or is it just a report?
For what?
So let's say, for example, the street department comes in, gives his budget presentation. That's just reported to the council. It doesn't have to be, no actions taken on it.
Well, you can. I mean, you're historically, yeah, the department has reviewed the budget, with the finance committee. The finance committee isn't approving the budget at that time, but if the finance committee, if there was a motion made to change or something in the budget, either to add or subtract, yeah, that would go to, be part of the report.
So there's been, and there will be going forward, opportunities along the way to make changes, correct?
Through the fight, well, basically, what way it could probably happen is that, yeah, I mean, if there's any change made at the finance committee level, yeah, that would be reported, and it would go to the next common council meeting for technically approval. I mean, that historically really hasn't happened that much, but I think one of the concerns is that all the persons not on the finance committee didn't have the opportunity to make adjustments to the budget other than at the adoption, at the public hearing or the adoption of the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor,
Yeah, and that's part of my concern is, as Jake said, that council, and Tim, you can correct me wrong because you've done this for a long time, council usually doesn't give guidance. It doesn't come in at the beginning of the budget process and say, hey, we need to cut 10% or we need to get to this level. That guidance never happens. The problem is what happens is what we had at the last budget meeting, and not to call Matt or Patrick, but they don't know when the process starts. So how can they make changes? And so change ends up happening at that budget meeting, which is, it's impossible. I couldn't imagine all of a sudden cutting $1 million and looking at staff and, hey, we've got to get this done within the next few weeks. So we're trying to get this process started earlier. And the hopes would be that we would get council participation, seeing more of a finalized, or not finalized, but more of a budget package that early enough that you can say, ooh, we need to cut this down. And if we can do that, over the summer months versus November, I think that's better. But historically, council doesn't give that guidance that we want to see X amount of money cut. And it's just, I think it's easy, and I can speak when I was in college, it's easy if you get a pretty much balanced budget, everything kind of works out, it's easy. But if we want to cut that budget, we need to start looking at that sooner. And we do need that guidance. Because, it could come down to, products and services, and where do we want to allocate those funds to? And I think that's a greater discussion that council's going to need to have. But it's important to give guidance, if there needs some guidance given. Thank you.
thank you. Matt,
Thank you. I think that this will help everybody be more comfortable too, instead of coming down to the wire. If things do have to happen, then it's going to be a process and everybody's going to be involved in it before it happens like it happened this last November. Certainly don't want that to happen again, but at the end, I guess it's a learning process. But I do find that the budget is just my opinion, but it's the most important thing that we do. Not that I don't enjoy talking about, colored sidewalks and all that fun stuff, but in reality, to me, the reason we're here is to make sure that the money's right for the residents that we're here to support, but also for the city workers that are busting their tail to make it happen, and we're the go-between. So I think we all take great, sense of responsibility for what that means for everybody involved. Thank you.
thank you. Okay, like I said, I think with the discussion tonight, we have a time frame here to work off of and start with, and as we go through it, if needs to tweak something or change something, up, move things upward, backward, whatever, that whoever becomes part of the committee as we go through the next season of the starting April, that can be looked at to go through. So if that's enough for everybody, we can move on to item 6, if that's okay. Item 6 is to discuss possible American Rescue Plan Act grant projects. Tim, I know you've just been waiting.
I put this on here because the Treasury finally issued their final guidance back in earlier in 2021. When the ARPA grant was approved and we received our allocation, the Treasury was developing their guidance on those. And, it was kind of, the mayor and I had discussed that. It was my recommendation that based on my experience with the routes to recovery funds with the Treasury, that, after the initial guidance is issued, that, there's feedback, there's things, there's changes and things like that. So, and the fact that we have until the December 31st, 2024 to expend the funds or to obligate the funds, and until the end of 2026 to actually expend the funds, it was kind of like kind of wait and see how the guidance shapes up. Well, in January of this year, they issued their final guidance, and in that guidance, one of the main, and I kind of was hearing hints of the Treasury of giving more flexibility to the recipients of the grants, and basically one of the major things, and it's a good thing, is that the Treasury just assumes that every recipient of the grant lost $10 million in revenue. And what that is that that's an eligible category under the grant guidance. Before, you actually had to demonstrate that loss through these various formulas. And basically what they said is just to kind of ease the burden on the recipients and the streamline the reporting. They're just assuming that everyone that receives funds, you can assume that you lost $10 million in revenue, and obviously a majority of the municipalities that receive funding, other than the larger ones, under that cap. So basically, we're allowed to say, okay, all the ARPA funds are assumed it's a revenue loss. The important thing there is that if it's lost revenue due to the COVID pandemic, we can use that fund for basically any governmental service that we normally provide. So it really opens up the various avenues of what the city can use those funds for. And so I distributed the 46 or 44-page summary that kind of goes through the various categories, and I encourage everyone to kind of go through there and read that. But the reason why I wanted to put this on the agenda tonight is I think we need to have a discussion of how we want to kind of compile the list of various usage and how we're going to go about prioritizing that and making decisions on what we're going to use our ARPA funds for. So, one of the things just kind of me putting out, my 2 cents on is that, I was wondering if, internally we can develop, a document that people can fill out, alderpersons, staff, whoever, even if it's citizen input, kind of, solicit ideas of what we want to use those funds for. And then once we can compile that list, the council can then go through and prioritize and determine what they want to use the ARPA funds for. But I just wanted to get that on there, so I think it's something that we should start to discuss and look at.
Yeah. And that I think is where you get however to get the ideas and things put together and a list or whatever put together, and then have a committee of the whole or whatever to talk about it, and what weight, give each one a weight or something, what and how we score it, which one I guess would win out, or however we want to do it. Judge it, say we have 10 and judge them 1 to 10, and maybe the last 2, whatever, but wouldn't get any. But somehow to do that, and then have a committee of the whole talk the thing over and weigh it out, or special council meeting, whichever. So, yep.
Thank you. Hypothetically, ARPA funding could be used for infrastructure, which we borrow for every year.
Correct.
So we could get rid of that borrowing if that's what was chosen to be done. Because that's been a hot button issue.
Right.
And it was through the budget process as well. So
Right. You're absolutely correct. It can use for street construction, things like that. And then we have projects identified in the budget that are supported with debt proceeds, and that could be one of the possible uses for the ARPA funds. We have about 1.2 million of the ARPA funds available for use in that projects. I just wanted to kind of get it on there so that we get any ideas and stuff on paper, and then once we kind of see all those, prioritize and make a decision. But that's definitely one use of those funds.
and those funds can start being used in this 2023 hypothetically just have to be used by 2026.
They have to be obligated by 2020, the end of 2024. And by obligated, meaning that you entered in a contract to expend the funds, and then you have till the end of 2026 to expend those funds. But we basically, they can be used for us, at 1.2, I don't think we'd have any issue or problems using it between this year, 2023, and 2024.
Patrick?
Are you saying that these funds are immediately available? Like right now, they're ready to be
Correct.
used? We just
Right.
have to allocate them?
We,
and-
we got our first allocation in July of this year. They deposited the funds because they just, it's the way the Treasury did it is that they give you the funds up front, and then you have to spend them on their uses. And basically what I did is I put it in a designated account. We received half of it, and in July of this year, we received the other half. But the amount is available for expenditure now and going forward. But if you remember in the budget, we did utilize some of those funds for the water main projects and stuff. But like I said, there's $1,252,000 available that we can use now and going forward.
So they have a pretty broad list of things that you can use it for. Do they also have a list of things that you cannot use it for?
You cannot use it for debt service, deposits to pension funds, to replace rainy day funds, and to reduce taxes. So you couldn't use it to like supplement something or reduce tax. If you reduce your taxes, you have to prove that ARPA funds were not utilized for reduction in taxes. So basically what they're saying is they want you to use it for new type projects, not to substitute ones you're already paying for.
Jake?
I'm not going to throw out all the ideas I have, but one in particular is just the area businesses that were affected by it more than others. I know we've done grants. I didn't even feel that we did enough then. If that could be a portion of the money, hypothetically, I think that should be on the list of whatever we put together to rank.
Right, and and if you remember in the paper and stuff like that, the state of Wisconsin did use some of their ARPA funds for small businesses that they could have applied, and I do believe like our local movie theater received relief funds. I think there was even the Wisconsin Raptors received funds. So the state of Wisconsin did do some programs for small businesses that they could apply from the state's ARPA allocation.
I understand. I'm just saying it potentially could be another use. Not all of it, but a portion of it.
Okay, so I think it's people to jot down a list or start a list and turn it in to Tim or the mayor or somewhere so we can get the thing put together and then proceed with that as.
Yeah, I think what maybe a suggestion would be is that the mayor we can draft an email and we can send it to all the persons, department heads, and things like that. So and then through that, people can respond to that email with their ideas and things like that.
Okay.
Whether we create a form that they can
Yeah,
easily fill
yeah.
out so it's standardized, but maybe I think that might be a good way to kind of start compiling those ideas.
Okay. Okay, Matt, now you do.
Yeah, thank you. How much are we talking? It might be in here, but I didn't get a chance to read it yet. How much in total are we talking about?
We have $1,252,000 available.
And that's for now, and that's the end of it?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a one-time
One-time thing.
grant.
All right, thank you.
Jake?
One more thing about the last thing you said. With sending it out to all the parties that you listed, I just wouldn't want it to turn into a wish list or, put one department against another. No offense, Paul, but if it were to go out to department heads, because as we've discussed before, every department has needs they want.
Right. Yeah, and I think we can put, through the mayor, we can put some parameters on, some of that obviously we don't want it to turn into, I think, a lot of the priorities, is, when you read through the document, it kind of gives you some good ideas on, the categories that they have, but, obviously infrastructure is a big thing that, we could utilize these funds for, and kind of, but yeah, and I would stress that, yeah, for departments, and we'll put in there, it isn't to substitute for what you normally get funded through the budget process, so it's not going to, yeah, I would agree. I don't want it to turn into this wish list. I think the funds need to make it, the most meaningful impact that we can get out of them.
Mayor?
Yeah, and Tim and I have spoke many times about this, and my concern is too, is that, the caution not to do these one-time projects, that we do a project and then we have to pay for maintenance down the road on the project. Because then we're committing, we're doing something nice in the community, however, we're going to hand strap other future councils to maintenance issues. So I think we have to caution on how we spend that and making sure it's best use for our taxpayers.
Okay, thank you, everybody. And with that, if there's nothing else there, item number 7, audit of the bills. And as I looked at them, I think we had check 11314 to start with to 11595.
Yep.
If I didn't miss anything in between or whatever. That's what I came up with anyway. So, anybody have any questions or anything? Otherwise, I'll move for acceptance of the audit of the bills. Motion is second. Approve. All those in favor, committee, all those in favor respond by aye. Aye. Opposed, ayes have it, 3-0. Item number 8 for us is to set the next meeting date, and as we're in a short month of February, it happens to be that meeting date for March is going to, unless we, for some reason we have to change it, it will be on Tuesday, March 1st. So if that works for everybody, we'll do that at 4, and again at 4:30, if that's all right. And if something arises, I guess, shortly, that doesn't fit or something, or we got to back up a little bit on time-wise or something, let me know so we can look at doing something. But for now, it'll be Tuesday, March 1st at 4:30. So, and I guess if anybody has any other things to add to the budget, they can, or the department heads or whoever, if they have something they have to get turned in that week prior. So, if there's nothing else on the meeting date, time, or to number 9, and that's on the agenda is to adjourn, and I'll entertain a motion. Second, we got a motion, a second to adjourn. Committee, all in favor, respond by aye. Aye. Opposed, ayes have it, 3-0. And with that, we're adjourned at 6:11.